You're listening to the Good Food CFO Podcast, where we focus on financial strategies for building a profitable food business. I'm your host, Sarah Delavan. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Sandra Velasquez, an NYC-based sales and distribution manager who has worked across several categories in the natural and specialty channels. She's opened hundreds of accounts and onboarded several companies with national distribution, all without the help of brokers. And now she's sharing her expertise through her course, Distro 101, to help new and emerging brand owners understand the ins and outs of the grocery world. On this episode, Sandra is giving us the need-to-know info for working with brokers, distributors, and chain grocers on a regional and national level. We're, of course, also digging into the numbers. We're going to get clear on what velocity over doors is and why that metric is so important to your business. We're talking about the big difference between margin and markup, how to gather key sales data without spending a fortune or burying your head in spreadsheets for days, and so much more. Sandra packs this episode with a ton of helpful information for CPG brands, and she joined me for a short bonus video on YouTube afterward, so be sure to check that out. I know that you're eager to dive in. Let's get to it. Sandra, welcome to the Good Food CFO Podcast. I am so excited to have you here. We're going to be talking about so much great stuff, and I'm just so happy you're joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love talking about all this stuff. I can talk about it forever. So any opportunity is welcome.
Oh, thank you. And I'm super excited because I work with food businesses that sell on a national level or who are, starting to expand on that level. And so I have some exposure to distributor fees and what it looks like for some businesses to do that. But I don't have an expansive knowledge like you do about what all is involved in growing a national business, working with a distributor. And so I'm really excited to learn along with a lot of our listeners today. So are you ready to dive in?
So ready.
Amazing.
Let's do it.
So I like to start by making sure everybody's on the same page at the beginning of the podcast. And I think a great place to start today is by talking about what is a broker, what is a distributor, and when should food business owners start thinking about them and bringing them into the conversation?
Yeah, great question. And there's a lot of confusion about like what a broker is or what they do because the lines get blurred between brokers and sales reps sometimes. Like I'm kind of a hybrid sales rep, kind of a broker by accident. But a broker is really somebody who, like, think of a real estate broker. Like, what is their role? Like, their role is to be like the go-between between like the homeowner and like the prospective renter, right? Okay. So that the homeowner doesn't have to talk to like 100 renters. They can just talk to that one, real estate broker, and that person can kind of vet everybody, right? Okay. So I think that's like the easiest way to, give you an example in other life of like what a broker does. So a broker is somebody in the grocery world who has relationships with grocery buyers, and they know the territory, so they work territorially, which is how most sales works. Like people are, they work in the Pacific Northwest, or they work in SoPac, Southern, California, or they do like Northeast or Mid-Atlantic, and they know that territory, they know those stores, they know the buyers, they already are friends with the buyers. And so you as a brand would hire a broker, to help you open up a region because you don't know those people. You don't know that, that area. Maybe you live across the country, right? So I think that, hiring a broker is something that you do when you are going to expand into another area where none of your team lives. Like you don't have any contact or proximity to that area. So you need someone to help you kind of open up that region. Okay. And I think that brokers are expensive for new brands, because you're paying like a monthly retainer. It can be a couple $1,000s a month. There can also be like a commission of sales. Everyone does it a little differently, but at the end of the day, like you're paying money, right? And when you're first starting up, it can be, a lot to kind of pay out up front with no guarantee. So that's the other thing, right? Is like you can be paying a broker to help you open up Southern California, but it's still going to take them time. So like meanwhile, you're paying like month to month to month, and you're like, why isn't anything happening? Why is it going so slow? And it's because it just takes a long time, regardless whether you have a broker or whether you don't. And so I think that that's one important note for new brands. Like I hear a lot of complaints from brands about brokers, and I think it's just because of their expectations. Like they just have maybe unreasonable expectations. They think like they're going to pay a broker, the broker's going to get them into the store like quickly, which is just not the case. And, you know, so that's what a broker does. And there's independent brokers, there's firms, there's different types of brokers, but that is their function, is to, you know, help you get a meeting with the buyer, right? Or even help you just sell into the store, help you with the paperwork. Because there's always a lot of paperwork, you know, in grocery. So that's the broker role. And then the distributor is your delivery and logistics partner. So, you know, a broker is not delivering any product. They're not actually touching the shelves usually. They're not driving trucks, right? So a distributor is really like the delivery service, right? They're your delivery partner. So they order like, you know, 4 weeks worth of inventory from you as like the manufacturer. And, you know, that is your one, you know, order, so that you don't have to like manage 100 different emails from all of your different accounts, right? Which is what people are doing when they're selling direct. Right. So you get one purchase order, you send it to the distributor, they store it for you in their warehouse, and then they take the orders from your stores and they deliver it to your stores for you.
We could dig into this topic alone in an entire podcast, so I don't want to spend too much time here, but one more point of sort of clarification. Someone might choose to have a team of sales reps, or they may choose to have some brokers. And I think when you're thinking about that process, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've got to think about, okay, this broker might be sort of self-directed. They know what their job is. We're paying them a fee. We don't really need to manage them per se. Whereas a sales team, there's management, it's like your in-house people. And so kind of understanding the hands-on differences, the financial differences of doing one versus the other would be an important thing to consider in deciding.
I think that's a great point, Sarah, because I actually think that anytime you work with anybody, you have to manage that relationship. Like there is no like set it and forget it, as I say. Like, okay, I'm paying them over there, now I don't have to worry about it. Right. Like you always have to worry about it. It's always your problem. It's still your brand. You know, the other thing we didn't mention is that brokers, you know, they have like a portfolio of brands that they represent, right? So when they wake up in the morning, they're not like rushing out the door to like work for your brand only, right? They have a lot of things to do, right? And a lot of stores to manage. So, you know, I actually recommend for people in the beginning when they're first getting started and, you know, funds are limited, to work as your own sales rep and work as your own broker. And that's easiest to do when you're starting locally, like in your own territory, you know?
So when should food business owners start thinking about brokers, distributors, and the myriad of things we're going to be talking about throughout the rest of the podcast today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think distributors are something that you will have to do because the store that you want to be in will force you to onboard. So, you know, if you wanted to get your product in Sprouts is going to say, okay, we love your product, Sarah. You have to onboard with KeHE.
Got it.
Right? So it's not going to be up to you if you want to or when you want to. It's going to be because you wanted to get into this account, and the only way into that account is to use their primary distributor, because every store in this country has a relationship with a distributor. They have contracts in place, right? So you have to use their distributor. So that's when it's time to use the distributor, is when you have to, because the store that you want to be in basically will say, you know, we can't bring you in unless you onboard, or we love your product, so we're going to force you to onboard.
Right. And so something important to take away from that bit of information you just shared is that you could be working with multiple distributors depending on the stores that you want to be in, or that want you as one of their brands.
100%. And that is how we end up working with many distributors, which is what I, you know, do at Van Leeuwen. I work with KeHE, I work with Unify, I manage Rainforest here in New York. And that's because they all service different accounts, right?
Yeah.
Like, so.
Yeah. Let's talk about some things you need to know about chain stores before we dive into more on the distributors. So
yeah,
what
absolutely.
are some important things that business owners should be aware of? And then give us some details. Fill us in.
Yeah, all the good stuff. So, number one, category review schedules. So a category review schedule is nothing more than a calendar of the year, where every single product category, think like baby food, chips, hair care, etc., right, has a window of time, like a very small window of time in the entire year when they are being allowed to submit and when they are reviewed. And so you have to get the category review schedule, like the next one, like the 2021 category review schedule for Whole Foods, right? Okay. We're always trying to get the next category review schedule so that we can find out when is our, time slot so that we can submit accordingly. And then, it is reviewed, and then if it's accepted, then it's, inserted months later. But this process, Sarah, is like months. Okay. So number one, category review schedule. Number two, it takes a long time. Right. So a long lead time. Right. So anyone that thinks like, I'm just gonna, get into Safeway, Portland, like it's not like, okay, they're going to order today and, tomorrow it's going to get there, right? Yeah. It just takes a long time. So just understanding that this is the cycle. And if someone tells you, Sarah, try again next year, like that's normal. Like we hear that all the time, right? Okay. Like, and you have to prepare like a year in advance. So there's that. And then,
I hear a lot about free fills.
Yeah.
Tell us about.
That was my next thing.
Is it? Because that was a top of mind for me because things happen in waves inside of my business. And I know right now, as we're recording this podcast, it's going to air a little bit later in the future. CPG brands are working on their businesses. The holidays are approaching. And free fills is a big topic. What is this?
I know. So the free fill is a pretty standard in grocery. So this is not, it's not unique. It's pretty much across the board. A free fill is one case per SKU per store for free. So when you say a free fill, it is based off, it's the first order for free, 100% free, right? And, but just so that everyone is not too scared about this, it's not that they can say, well, for my first order, I would like 50 cases of this one SKU. No, right? So it is really harsh, but it's limited to one case per SKU, right? So if you make a drink and it comes in a 12 pack and you have 3 flavors, you're giving 3 cases to each store. However, 3 cases for free times 200 stores is a lot of free cases, right? Yeah. So that's a free fill, and that's pretty much required for a lot of larger chain stores. Every product in Whole Foods had to give a free fill to get in. Okay. It's just how it is. And just again, to clarify some points on the free fill, this is not getting passed to the consumer. This is not going on sale, right? This is Whole Foods getting this product for free and selling it at full price and adding that to their bottom line, right?
and then determining if they'll buy more. Like,
yes,
there's no guarantee that after this first round of free cases that you're going to be selling more.
Well, I mean, if you're going into a chain store, like a large chain store with hundreds of locations, like let's just say Whole Foods, everyone knows Whole Foods. Yes, hopefully you should sell out of one case per SKU pretty quickly, and then they're going to, place that the next order, right? Which is going to be at full price. Great. So, but in the context of independents, like the indies, you can give a free fill and it could not sell and they could not reorder, in which case you just gave the free product and the trial did not go well, right? So free fills are not just for chains. I do them all the time here in New York for independents as well. And especially in a really competitive place like New York, the independents expect a free fill. It's just, and they're not shy to ask. They're just like, so yeah, send me a free fill. Like it's just expected. So, and then more on the free fill, again, just so that everyone is really clear about how this works. If you're working with a distributor and you give a free fill to Whole Foods, that free fill is based off of the wholesale price. Okay. So in other words, me, let's say I'm the product maker and I make my peanut butter and I sell it to the distributor for $4, and then the distributor sells it to the store for, let's say, $5.50. that free fill is I'm going to get charged back the $5.50 that the distributor is selling to the store for. So in other words, I'm getting charged back more than what I sold it for.
Got it. So
does that make sense?
Yeah. So just to make sure that everyone listening and I am on the same page here, it's not that you are packing up a case and giving it to your distributor to deliver to the store. That's happening, and then you're actually giving them money?
So, well, there's that also, that we can talk about slotting fees next.
Okay.
But think of it this way. Your distributor has ordered this product. It's already in the distributor warehouse. And now you have gotten into a store that needs a free fill.
Oh,
that distributor still has to go and get in their car, pay the gas, pay the driver, pay their truck to deliver your product. They're not going to do that out of the kindness of their heart just because you need to give a free fill.
Got it. Okay.
They still have to get paid. So when you get charged back, this free fill is a chargeback. It comes back like it's a deduction. So, right, you think you're going to make 10 grand, but it says minus $5,000, for example, right?
Okay.
It comes back to you as a deduction on what you think money, that you're getting, that you're hoping to make.
Yeah.
So, and it comes back to you as a deduction based off of the price that the distributor was going to sell it to the store for.
Right. That is so helpful. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, I hope that's clear.
It's clear to me, and if it's not clear to anybody listening, we're going to share Sandra's information at the end of the podcast, so further clarification can come. But yeah, it's a sort of a confusing concept, I think, if you've never seen it happen. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it on paper in front of you.
Yes, I think it helps to just see it on paper.
Yeah.
But to your other point that you brought up, slotting fees are the next thing that I was going to say. So some stores will need a free fill and the slotting fee. So a slotting fee is, again, the free fill and the slotting fee, these are things that only happen once. This is like you are getting your foot in the door, right? This is not a recurring charge. This is like a one-time, you buy your movie ticket, now you get to go into the movie theater. Even if you go back outside to your car because you forgot your purse, you don't get charged again, right? So the slotting fee is based off of like, per SKU, and it's like chain wide. Sometimes the stores will break it down like per SKU. They'll say like $50 per SKU per store, which sounds like, $50, but then like times 200 stores, that's a lot, right? Yeah. So I've seen it both ways, Sarah. I've seen it where the chain store will say it's $1,500 per SKU for the chain, right? And so therefore, like Gelson's in Southern California. Gelson's in Southern California, it's $1,500 per SKU for 27 stores. So if you do the math, it comes out to around $50 per store, per SKU.
Right.
And that is a one-time, right, to get your foot in the door. And the note here is that just because you paid to get in doesn't mean you get to stay there forever. Right?
Good point.
You still have to support sales. Like you're gonna get to stay if your product is moving. After it's like, they're gonna give you 6 months, to get your velocities up. And if it's not performing, then bye. And then you can try again next year and pay again.
On the topic of, you just mentioned 6 months, and you might have just kind of pulled that, number randomly. But do stores, are they open with this is the time frame that we want to see things moving in? And if not,
yeah,
sort of
that's a great question. 6 months is, I remember what Gelson's told, me, like, okay, we're going to review in 6 months, and if it's not moving, then I guess you didn't support, right?
Yeah.
So 6 months, but chain stores, they're reviewing annually, right? So it's either 6 months or a year, pretty much. And the harsh reality that I like to remind people of is that there is room for your product on the shelf because somebody else got discontinued. Like the shelves, when have you ever gone to the store and seen like open shelves? Like, there's just so much room here at Safeway for my product to go in, right? Yeah. It's because someone else failed, and now they're going to make room for something else to hopefully sell better.
You didn't win the game by getting in the store. You got a chance to play the game.
Yes, Sarah, I love that. Yes.
Fascinating. So, okay, we've got our lead times and our category reviews, so we're clear on that. We've talked about free fills and talked about how that works from a financial standpoint. We also just covered slotting fees. Is there anything else we need to know about approaching and working with chain stores?
Yes, there's one more thing.
Okay.
And that thing is promotions. So you need to, like we were just saying, if you don't perform well, then you're going to get discontinued. It's called getting discoed. So getting discontinued. And the way that you support sales is like through demos, promotions and merchandise. And so in this, context, so promotions, every time you onboard with a retailer, you're going to set up your promotional schedule with them. And they like to see quarterly promotions, many of them, right? So once a quarter, you are going to go on sale, which means, again, you're getting charged, you're paying for that promotion, right? A promotion is not the store, again, out of the kindness of their heart, putting it on sale and taking a lower margin. This is you paying for that promotion, okay? So, and then quarterly, and some stores will like to see ads, like ads in conjunction with a sale. So like your product's on sale on the shelf, and I walk into the store and you're like, there's a picture of your product in the color monthly, circular or whatever, right? So you have to do promotions. So you can't say, I want to get into the store, but I have no money to promote. Then no, no good.
So for example, if you category review happens, you go through the free fill, you pay your slotting fee, you're on the shelf, it comes time to advertise and do promotions inside the store. Yeah. That's not something you throw together quickly. No. So this also takes some time and some planning to make sure that you're doing it correctly, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely. It's not something that you throw together at the last minute. It's something that you set in advance, ideally, like when you first on board. Like, okay, thank you, so-and-so market for, we're excited to make this partnership successful. Mm-hmm. Let's set up some promotions to drive trial, right? Which is the industry terminology to say, like, to help it move off the shelf, right? To help customers want to pick it up and try it. So you're driving trial.
So my financial consultant brain is like, oh my gosh, I hope you have done the work to figure out what kind of promo you can afford to do inside the store quarters from now, to make sure that you're not hurting the bottom line of your business. So can you talk a little bit about how a promo, so let's say you're offering $1 off in some manner as part of the promo. How does that get charged back in a sense? That's I'm imagining it sort of happens similar to the free fill.
As a deduction. So you will get like, you'll either get a bill from the retailer, like there's different types of promotions. So that's we could have a whole podcast just on that, right? So there are scan backs, right? This is like where you give a dollar amount, like, okay, 65 cents at the register. So like every time literally a person goes to the register with your product and it scans through, is going to deduct 65 cents. And you, at the end of your promo period, which is usually like a month, right, you will get a charge back for those, right? Here's all the scans that happened during your promo. Congratulations, lots of sales. Here's what you owe us for this promo, right? Got it. And so there's a scan. There's also what's called like a TPR, which stands for temporary price reduction. And this is something that you can, I do these sometimes last minute because maybe product isn't moving well and you're like, oh my God, we have to, let's do it like last minute Q4 promo for this store so that we, get to stay in the store. And that is like a percentage off. Like you'll say like, I'm going to take 10% off of the tag so they can put it on sale. Okay. But again, these are all things that you are getting charged back for, right? So I think that's the main takeaway here is like, whatever the dollar amount is, whether it's a scan or whatever type of promo it is, like a scan, a TPR, an off invoice, you are going to see these as like you're either going to you're owing money.
Right. So it's not only good to know how much you're discounting or offering off per unit, but also understanding or estimating, forecasting how many units are you going to move during that phase as well. Seems like both of those things are really important to take into consideration.
Yes, and I think it's hard for a lot of new brands who are like trying to do it for the first time because they're like, what should I give? Like, what should be my promo? What's the limit? And it's kind of like when you do ads of any kind, you're like, we have to test and see what happens. Like, did this work when we did it this way? Did it work better when we did it this way? Mm-hmm. Like, and not to mention every retailer has a different customer base. Like, is this like an EDLP store, like an everyday low price store where people shop on sale only? Like they're trained to just like buy things on sale, or is this like, Whole Foods, right?
Yeah.
Which is not an EDLP store, right? People are used to paying more. They're happy to pay more for like these premium products.
Yeah.
So you do different types of promotions for different types of retailers. And if this all sounds like really overwhelming, what we do is you have to create a promo calendar, which again is nothing more than like an Excel sheet
right.
of like all the months of the year, all of your retailers, and like you have to keep track. Every time you give something to somebody, you want to put it in your promo calendar because you're not going to remember, right? So you want to literally write it down so that when you get your invoices and your chargebacks, you go, okay, minus this, and like you go and you check it against your promo calendar. Oh, that's because we were on sale at Whole Foods, right?
Yeah, got it. Oh, this is all amazingly helpful and informative. Thank you. That's great.
Good.
So, okay, so we've covered 4 big things that you need to know and understand in regard to working with chain stores. So now let's talk about the distributor aspect, because obviously if you're growing into 200 stores, that store, as you mentioned earlier, is probably going to have a preferred distributor that you need to work with. So I'll just ask that same generic question again. What do we need to know about distributors?
So much stuff, Sarah. You need to know so much stuff about distributors. Where should we begin? Okay, first of all, just account for like a 25 margin.
Okay.
So that's like, I'm giving you like an average because I've met distributors that will take as low as like 18, which I've only actually encountered that once. And then I've encountered distributors that are like, we need 30, which is very high.
Okay.
So that's why I say 25, like it's generally 25. And again, this is a 25% margin, not a markup. We're doing margin math. We're using margin calculators, right, to make sure that we are doing 25 margin. Mm-hmm. And so that's number one. So you want to factor that in and understand like, okay, if they need a 25 margin and I want to sell it for this on the shelf, right, then like you have to do the math. And the store is going to need like 40, again, like average.
Right.
So you have to do the math backwards. You're like, well, my peanut butter can't sell for $20, right? So if I need my peanut butter to sell for X amount of dollars, this is going to be the SRP, and then you can say, and the store is going to need 40 margin, and then backwards you go, it'll tell you like what the wholesale price will be. You just keep going backwards until you're like, okay, that means I have to sell it for this so that it can end up like this.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. And I'll point out, and you and I have talked about this prior to recording this podcast. This is the math that you should do at the beginning of your business, not at the time that you are ready to start working with the distributor, right? Like just go through this process and do these numbers to arrive at your like cost to the distributor in the beginning.
Yes.
And work that out and make sure that you can build a profitable business by selling a product for that price.
Yes, I think that's so important, and I feel like I know a lot of people don't do that, right? And I know that I wish that they all did, right? I wish that you would go through the whole exercise before you even make the product. Like, can you afford to sell it for the price that it needs to be, like with how much it costs to make, right? Yeah. And just that whole exercise, right? Like really think, where do I want this to go? Do I want to be a local brand? Do I just want to sell like into local co-ops? Am I trying to be in Safeway? If so, like, you have to decide what kind of business, you want to run and what's successful, for you, because there isn't just one way to be successful, or like, it's defined by you, right? So you decide.
Love that.
So that's the first thing. We talked about margin. That's the one thing about distributors. Number 2, your distributor is not your sales rep. I have like an entire module of this in my class. Like, I really try to nail this home. Like, I know it's exciting. You're onboarding with a distributor. I remember that feeling like, oh my God, it's like a record deal. Like, yeah, we got signed, right? We have a distributor now. We're going to be in all these stores. But then again, a distributor manages like hundreds, if not thousands of products, right? And put yourself, this is like where empathy comes in. Like, put yourself into the shoes of distributor reps who are getting paid like commission, like a base salary plus commission. So what incentive do they have to sell your product that nobody has ever heard of, that there's no brand awareness, they don't know if you're going to be in business next year, versus selling like Health-Ade Kombucha, which they already know sells, which everyone is already carrying, and if they sell, 60 cases of that to a store, they make a commission, right? So you have to help distributors help you.
Right.
And so, like, going back to our earlier point, like, you have to manage that relationship. It's not like, I got signed, I got a record deal, now I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
No, like, you got signed, you got a record deal, now you have to go on tour for 2 years.
Yeah. I'm putting myself into the shoes of a business owner right now who's listening to our conversation, and I want to dissect it a little bit further. So we were talking about, if you want to work with a chain store, you're going to have to partner up with the distributor that they use.
Yeah.
So are you telling me that even if I want to work with Whole Foods or Sprouts and I sign on with their preferred distributor, that it's still not a guarantee that things are going to just kind of work? I still have to put forth and manage the relationships on both ends to make it successful.
So this is a good point. This is a good point of distinction. So if you are onboarding with KeHE so that you can just get into Sprouts, that's going to happen because Sprouts wants you.
Okay.
Now I'm talking about, now you're with KeHE. Do you just want to be in Sprouts? Is that all you want? Or do you want to be in other KeHE accounts? Because if you want to be in other KeHE accounts, this is what I mean, where you like step in and like show up and like reach out to reps, build relationships, ask for contacts, ask to be introduced to buyers, go to those stores yourself and say, hey, now we're with KeHE. Here's our item codes. You can now order us, because now they can, right? Because now you're working with their preferred distributor, right? Like if someone showed up to you as the buyer and like, hey, I use your distributor, Sarah, like now you can order my product.
Yeah.
It makes it easier for you because you don't have to do anything except for literally type in an item code.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily clarifying, but like putting it in front of us, because I think sometimes that's an area where business owners don't sort of like follow the thought from the beginning to the end, right? Like we've got this win, but what other opportunity is there? And then how do you maximize that opportunity? Just because KeHE is delivering to Sprouts, like you said, they're not going to happily deliver and knock on the doors of the other, retailers that they work with.
Right. And I think another way to like explain this is like people have asked me, so when I onboard with a distributor, will people just be able to order my product from a catalog? And I'm like, well, I'm in the white pages. Does that mean someone will call me? Like the catalog is very, very big, right? No one's just like kicking back with their feet up on their desk, like browsing through the catalog. Yeah. Can someone discover you as like a new item? Like, yes, it can happen, but never rely on being discovered. Like you have to still go out and tell people, hi, I exist. Yeah. I'm new.
Yeah.
So it requires your engagement.
Love that. Okay. Amazing. So what else? What else do we need to know about distributors?
Okay. So we've got the margins down. We've got like understanding like what they do, what they don't do.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's clear, that your engagement is required. And I think that's like the gist of what, people need to be prepared for. And just remembering that like, it's not like we often say like my distributor, like my this, but they have hundreds of, you are like one of many, 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 of things that they manage. So it's up to you to just, like show up, like part of my job with Van Leeuwen is to manage rainforest. Like I am the person that they talk to, right? I text them like on a regular basis. I talk to them, the reps, more than I talk to my own friends and family.
Right.
Because, they're out in the field and stores want deals and they have questions and ice cream has melted and there's problems and, be ready and willing to problem solve and help them. Like, and just understand that what we're doing when we have a business is we're solving problems every day.
Right.
Like that is the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't be dismayed or, upset that, your pallet got lost or the store complained. Like this is what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to what you've said twice now, and I can almost hear you saying it again, it's not set it and forget it. So you've got your product with a distributor. Your distributor is visiting, this store that you're now on the shelves in, on a regular basis, but things aren't going to be perfect all of the time. You still need to manage the relationship with the store itself. And then you also need to manage the relationship with your distributor. So when you talk about showing up, that's sort of what it looks like.
Yes. And we haven't even talked about managing the retailer relationship, but that is where merchandising comes in. Like grocery is a very like boots on the ground business. Like it's not like seamless where we can just like fix things from an app, like order dinner from an app and it just shows up. Like we have to show up like physically. Someone has to show up from your team at the store, especially if you have like a high velocity item like chips or snacks or drinks, things that like people are buying like on their lunch break, right? Yeah. If you make like, essential oils, you don't need to worry so much about merchandising because, that $30 bottle of essential oil is not flying off the shelf like watermelon water is, right? So merchandising, don't be surprised if you go to the store that you think you're supposed to be in and you're not on the shelf.
Right.
Or don't be surprised if you go to that store and the price tag is wrong. Don't be surprised if you go there and someone else is in your place. Like this is also part of the job of like managing, that ground level, support, like at the retail level.
You posted an Instagram post today, the day that we're recording, and I have to stop here on that note about margins and just read this. This is just a portion of Sandra's Instagram post. If you don't follow her yet on Instagram, you must. She says, before you get excited about what you're going to get out of a distributor relationship, right? Out of a national chain store relationship, make sure you understand what you have to give. Many a brand have paid slotting fees and free fills to get into a chain they could not afford to support, only to get discontinued. And that, when I read it this morning, I was like, it's just such important information. And I related it back to buying a house, which I think is so funny because you were talking about a broker being sort of like a realtor earlier. Right. When you buy a house, it's not just the mortgage, right, that you're paying for. There's a whole lot of other costs that come with owning and caring for that home. And I think it's very similar when you are deciding to work with distributors and grow nationally. And I just wanted to read that because I think it's such an important takeaway for what we've talked about already, and we've got more to dive into. So
I don't like financial surprises. Yeah. So I'm just like, you got to know all this stuff up front because then you can decide like, first of all, do you want to do this? Number two, like if you do, and if you know all this and you're ready to go, then let's go. Now you know what you're jumping into. Yeah.
So something I hear a lot of CPG brands talk about is velocity. And I know you've mentioned velocity over doors. That sounds like a foreign language to me. Can you explain when you talk about velocity, what does that mean in like layman's terms? And then what do we need to know, and fill us in on velocity?
Yeah. Velocity, if you have a CPG brand, velocity is literally your new favorite word. So, okay, you will, once you're in business selling to stores, like you will always be talking about velocity till the day you sell your company. So, velocity is the speed at which your product moves off of the shelf per SKU, per week, per store.
Okay.
So you make a drink. It comes in a 12-pack. How many bottles or how many cases are you moving per week, per store? Like each location, right? Each location. So that's what velocity is. Okay. And when we look at like syndicated data, like from Spins or, any of this, we're always looking at the velocity column, right? Because you can have 22 SKUs in a store, but if your velocity is like 0.5 and people who have only 3 SKUs, their velocity is like 7, well then, that is what the store wants. They don't need a lot of SKUs that are not selling.
Yeah.
So when we say velocity over doors, what this means, this is really like for early like CPG founders, because people get excited about being in a lot of stores, right? They're like, I'm in 100 stores, I'm in 50 stores. Okay, but how are your sales, right? So in layman's terms, it's like, how are your sales?
Yeah.
Like, you can be in 50 stores, but if you're not selling well, then that's not good.
Yeah.
Right? So in the beginning, when I say prioritize velocity over doors, it's like, get into 10 stores, Sarah. Get into 10 stores in where you live that you can reach, that you can build relationships with, that you can physically drive to, and get your sales up in those stores first. So because then you take that velocity, that data, right? Yeah. Like in my category, the average velocity is like 3 units per week per store, and my velocity is 3.5. So I am actually outperforming the category average. I'm going to now take that sales data, which is my velocity, and I'm going to go to the next chain store that I want to be in, or the next set of stores, and say like, look, here's how we're performing. in our category. We are outperforming the category, or we are a category leader, right? And that is how you sell into more stores. You don't sell into more stores by saying, I'm in 100 stores, so you should take me too, because you can be in 100 stores and be doing terrible.
Yeah.
Just because you're in 100 stores does not automatically mean your product is going to sell.
Right.
Right? You have to help drive sales through like the things that we've talked about, promotions and merchandising, and like obviously there's no demos right now because of COVID, but like external marketing, like, anything that you can do to drive trial, to get people to pick up your product and repeat buy it, right? Like buy it again.
So does your velocity data come from the store itself? Does each store provide you with that data, and what time frame does it come in? And Lord help me, I hope it's not like a PDF that you have to then transfer to an Excel spreadsheet.
That is a whole other conversation. But so your sales data, you don't always get it from your retailers, right? So like for example, when I first started working for High Bar, like they were selling direct to co-ops in Minneapolis, which is where they live. So all they had for sales data was like their purchase orders and like the frequency of them. So right, if every month you get a purchase order for like X amount of cases, then you can kind of just like do general math to divide, well, I think that means that they're selling this many per day.
Yeah. Right,
generally. So use whatever data you have, right? Like new founders don't need to get overwhelmed about or like worried about buying SPINS data, which is thousands of dollars and really expensive. But use whatever data you have. So if you're selling direct, use your own orders. Sometimes stores will give you what's called a movement report, right? But they'll just give it to you for yourself. So you won't know how you're doing in comparison.
Got it.
Right? But it never hurts to ask, right? It never hurts to ask and say, hey, I'm just wondering, like, what is the category average velocity for this? What is it for hair care? It's going to be different for shampoo than it is for peanut butter, than it is for drinks. So you only care about your category, right? Like we live in categories in grocery, so it doesn't matter like what a different category is doing. You're only being compared against your category.
Yeah. I love that tip to ask, what is the category average? Because then you've got a benchmark that you're working toward, right? Because if you don't know what that average is, like what is your goal supposed to be?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's like if you're trying to be like a marathon runner, you're like, well, what time am I supposed to beat? Like who's the fastest marathon runner, right? You need to have a benchmark, like you said.
Yeah. And then just again, getting back into my financial consultant, space, it's like thinking about how you bill for your product and how you track that information. Simple tools like QuickBooks can actually help you just get that information organized and, run a report and see data month by month. And track that. So sometimes it seems, like, oh, QuickBooks is for that accounting data and sort of that's it. But if you're invoicing through that system and you've got all of your products in that system by SKU, it can help you in that sort of collection of your own data and monitoring those POs and the frequency. So I just want to point that out. Like, don't be overwhelmed about, oh gosh, now I have more data to collect from however many stores I'm working with. It can be simplified if you put the processes in place inside your business.
Totally. And use what you have, right? Like QuickBooks. I love QuickBooks. Like use anything that you have to like just tell you how it's going. I mean, you need to know how it's going, right? And then you need to know how it's going like in your category so that you can compare, right? Like how you're performing within your category. And that, again, I can't stress enough, like people overlook the store as like a resource. They're like, how do I know what the top sellers are? I'm like, have you gone to the store and asked? Because I do this all the time. I go into a store and I'm like, what's the top selling ice cream? And they'll just tell me. The people are very chatty, right? Yeah. And, like none of us feel bad about going into a wine store and saying, can you please recommend like your best Merlot? Yeah. Like we have no problem asking those questions, right? But for some reason, I think people are like shy or they think it's taboo to go into a store and ask the people stocking the shelves like what's happening. But those are the people that know, because those are the people stocking the shelves.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about margin earlier in relation to the distributor, and it's still on my mind. I want to dive into it a little bit further because I think you touched on something. You said we're talking about margin here, not markup. And again, in case anybody listening isn't crystal clear on what is the difference between the two, can you lay that out for us, hopefully?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's confusing, first I'll just say, in grocery is that we mostly deal with margins, but occasionally you will come across a store that deals with a markup situation where they talk about things in markup.
Okay.
And so here locally in Brooklyn, there is a co-op, our only co-op, called the Parksville Food Co-op, that their pricing structure is to do 21% markup above wholesale.
Okay.
That's their system, and that's why they have great prices, and that's why there's 10,000 members, and it's super high volume store, right, because they don't they don't inflate their prices.
Right.
So,
and to break it down right to the math, it's whatever it costs the co-op to buy the product. They're taking 21%. They're calculating what's 21% of the price that I just paid, and they're adding that amount on top of it, and that's the price that they're selling to the customer.
Yes.
So that's your markup.
Yes, and that is actually the best definition of how to think of a markup. A markup is literally a percentage number that you use to arrive at a price. Like, you don't say, what's your markup profit? Mm-hmm. Like, no one really says that, right? Yeah. So a markup is, like you said, 20. So if I'm selling my product to the Parksville Food Co-op for $4, they're going to go $4 times 0.21,
yep,
the 21%, whatever that number is, they're going to add it on top, and that's now the shelf price. Yeah. That's it. It's very, very straightforward.
I want to point out, like, some business owners early on in their business, they use markup to arrive at the price that they're going to sell their product for. No. So if you're listening and you're doing that, that's not the way to go about it. It's sort of an old industry standard, I think, that a lot of people follow. 30% markup, 50% markup. It doesn't translate very well inside of the food industry. So while some of your wholesale customers, right, they might add a markup like the co-op to your product to arrive at their sale price, you should not be utilizing a markup like your cost plus a certain percentage markup to arrive at your price. I just feel like that was an important thing to mention while we're talking about markup.
Super important. Yeah, super important. So in grocery, we mostly deal with margins, which is like otherwise known as your profit margin. Mm-hmm. Like, how much are you actually making?
Yep.
And what's scary is that when you really look at like margin and markup side to side, like the numbers are wildly different. So like to your point, like, I don't want anyone to go away thinking that they're making like an 83% profit when that's actually like the markup percentage, and the profit is really like 40 something.
Yes.
Right. So that is the difference. And then margin, I just recommend to everybody to have a margin markup calculator on their iPhone. You can download one for free from the App Store. Do it right now in the middle of this podcast. Go to the App Store. I use one called Wholesale Retail Calculator. It's green and it has a $sign in the middle. And I like that one because it has like 3 segments where I can type in like my cost, like the distributor's cost, and then and I can say like, and then the store needs this margin, and you just type one thing into all these fields, and it tells you everything. It tells you the markup and the margin.
Right.
So, it's good to see those side by side to know like how different they are.
Yes.
But also to help you, like when we're talking about working the distributor in a store, and understanding everyone's prices and how it affects the final shelf price. Mm-hmm. Right. So, the long way to do a margin, and I force all the students in my class to do this. I'm like, everyone take out your calculator. We're going to do this the long way.
Yeah.
Is, because I love the margin calculator, but I want everyone to be able to do it like the longhand way. Is I just, in simple English terms, the way that I explain it is like, you take the big number, you subtract the smaller number, and you divide it by the big number, and that's your margin percentage. Mm-hmm. So, if the wholesale price is like $5.48 and the SRP is $9.95, then you're going to say $9.95 minus the $5.48. That's your profit now, and then you're going to divide that by the bigger number, the price, mm-hmm. and that will tell you what the margin percentage is.
Yeah, I have a solid way of pricing products, I'd like to say, that involves understanding what your cost margins are, right? So your ingredient cost margins, your packaging cost margins, right? And you've got to figure out what are they now and what do they need to be in order for you to have a profitable business. And so
yes.
I think knowing how to calculate that, yes, there are tools that can help you do it, right? And I do recommend, downloading that calculator that you just mentioned, or even if you're doing, costing out your products and trying to determine the right margin and what you need to achieve, calculators are so helpful, right? And they also help you make sure you're not making a mistake. But knowing how to do that math on your own, and then also understanding the margins of your business is extremely helpful to running a profitable food business. And I think, even if you were to Google the terms and try to read it, you're like, oh, I'm not really sure. But that's, I think, what you and I are here for, right? It's like tap into our, I think we both have some free tools. We've obviously got our programs that we offer, and you can, just kind of brush the surface of what we have to teach and help you with, or you can dive deep with us and really dig into the numbers. So don't feel like there's any dumb question. That's one of the reasons I like to really lay it all out during these podcasts and just ask any question that comes to mind, because it's got to be going through somebody's head if it's going through mine, right? And ask away.
Yes, ask questions. And I can't say that math was my favorite subject in high school or college, but I have learned to love the math, because without the math, everything falls apart.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the most heartbreaking thing, right? Is that people have great intentions. They have a great product. They're mission driven, and then they just didn't do the math. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, and now you can't give back to that farm in Guatemala because you didn't do the math.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you can't pay yourself because you didn't do the math. I mean, the list of things goes on. And there's another thing we talked about the first time we met over the phone, and just talking about the work and why we do what we do. For both of us, part of the core mission is changing our food system, right? If you working with businesses that have values-based businesses, they're mission-driven. And I think I actually wrote down something you said. It was if you want to save the oceans, if you want to save, the land and the soil, you've got to be in business to fulfill your mission. And in order for that to happen, you got to get the numbers right.
Yes. It all starts with the math, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, everything is math. Your formula is math. Everything is math.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to love the math.
Yeah.
Just embrace.
And I think half the battle too is knowing what math you need to know, right? So, and I think that's why everything you shared with us today, it's a ton of information packed into this podcast. I kind of can't believe how much you're able to share with us and that we were able to cover. But it opens up, I think, people's minds to, if my goal for my business is to be even regional or in a tri-state area or my half of the country, right? What will it take to do that? And what are the things that I need to consider? Even sharing with us, the average distributor margin is 25%, but you can range from 18 to 30. That is huge information. The fact that you could work with multiple different distributors and you're going to have to, in theory, negotiate that and have different rates with different distributors. That's important information to work into your numbers. It's just, a ton of information. I have a feeling that people may listen to this episode more than once to really soak it in. And I encourage that. And I think if you're down for it, Sandra, this podcast also airs on YouTube. And for anybody who didn't perfectly follow the math that we talked through, Sandra and I are going to record a little special video in addition to this podcast that's got some of those formulas spelled out for you. So you can check us out at Good Food CFO on YouTube to view that information. So where can people find you? I know I've been waxing poetic about your Instagram account. So tell our listeners where they can find you and how they can reach you and where they can learn more about your resources.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram with a lot of blunt advice about distribution and sales. My handle is Distro Talk, because I talk a lot about distribution. And my website is also distrotalk.com. So people can find me there. You can book a call, or, I teach a monthly class to food and beverage founders to really walk them through, how I do my job as a sales rep and a distribution manager, so that they can gain clarity and hopefully save 2 years of their life of trying to figure it out. Because let me tell you, there's no way that you would know how this stuff works unless you've already had a company before. Yeah. So don't feel bad if you feel confused, about how it works. And there's so many acronyms, and there's no way that you would know what these things mean unless you have gone through it, right? So just learn from somebody who's gone through it, and just to get a leg up and save time so you can make that money and save the rainforest.
Yes. Yes. Oh, it has been such a pleasure. I'm so thankful that you spent this hour or so with us today. I'm already planning on having you back because I feel like there's
awesome.
so much to talk about.
We have so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
We just scratched the surface, Sarah.
And again, you can join us on YouTube where we're going to do a little special bonus information with some information slides so you can see the math in real life. And you can get the link to that in the show notes along with the links to get in touch with Sandra as well. So thank you again, everybody. Have a great day. And Sandra, I'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.